I'm gonna get started just to welcome the people.
Great, let's do it.
Hello everyone. Hello everybody on the Zoom and on Facebook. My name's Josh, and I am the Masa Regional Director for the UK, Scandinavia, and the Netherlands. And really delighted that in the midst of this cold weather, I think that the real feel, as I look on my watch, is -5 outside, even though it's like a little bit warmer than that. And we're going to learn over the next hour while you have your avocado on toast, very hipster, about Masa Israel Teaching Fellows and how you have the opportunity to go to Israel, even in the midst of this global pandemic, which that's going to be it's not going to be the last time I'll mention it today, but we're going to celebrate over the next hour about the opportunities that you have. We're going to hear from 2 wonderful alumni of the program from the past few years. And also, I'm now going to introduce Vanessa, who is the MITF coordinator. She is in Jerusalem. I am so jealous. And I'm going to hand over to Vanessa, who's going to kind of take the lead for the time being. And yeah, over to you, Vanessa.
Amazing. Thank you, Josh. We're going to start our presentation today, or before we start our presentation today, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Vanessa Better, and as Josh said, I'm here in Jerusalem. I live in Jerusalem. I'm originally from California, made Aliyah about a little over a year ago, but I've been in Israel for almost 3.5 years or so. I did a year abroad, I staffed a gap year, and then decided why fly back and forth so much, and just decided to make Aliyah. And so I'm really excited to be able to speak with you today about Masa Israel Teaching Fellows, because it's really it's a 10-month experience, that has to do with just experiential education in the truest of sense, both for you and for the students that you'll be working with. I'm a product of experiential education, doing youth groups and summer camps, and just different kinds of Masa programming as well. And so I just know that this is a 10 months that you're really just investing in yourself, in your future, and the future of the students that you'll be working with. So today we're going to go over what your 10 months will look like, the day-to-day, a little bit more specifics of on the ground. I'll share some fellow experiences with you from our fellows, and then we'll hear from our alumni, and it'll just be a big combination of what this year can offer you, but also what is going to happen to you after 10 months. What is MITF going to do for you after you leave Israel and go back to your homes, and really where it's going to launch you into the job market. So all of those things will be covered. But first I want to speak about when we wake up each morning, when we spend our days, our weeks, our months, we're thinking always about a lot of things. And I think in the past year, especially, this is really where our brain's been at, right? If you can kind of see the different colored sections, the questions that you're asking yourself, my financial obligations, my rent, how am I paying my bills? Where am I going to? How am I paying to go to there, right? Traveling, that's even out of the question now. All of these pieces are things that I think we think about daily and take up a lot of our brain space, right? Whether you're in university, whether you've been in the job, the working world for a while, these are things that are constantly taking up your brain space. So now I want to challenge you. If those things weren't taking up your brain space, what could you fill your time with? What could you fill your life with? What could you be doing differently? When you're on MITF for the 10 months, these are the kinds of questions that you're able to ask yourselves. Your rent is going to be paid for. I'll just tell you that. Your rent is going to be paid for by Masa for the 10 months. Your bills are going to be paid for. Your apartment will be set up. You're going to have a job that you're going to go to every day. You're going to have program days set up for you to explore Israel and to see different spaces around your city. So what are you going to spend your time doing, right? You're in your classroom for, let's say, from 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. What are you doing for those next 15 hours of your day? These are the kinds of questions that you're going to get to ask yourselves. And these are the kinds of questions that lead you to personal discovery, but also professional discovery. You'll hear from Jonathan a little bit later about how MITF took him from one world in corporate work into Jewish nonprofit, and how the 10 months allowed him to really just take a pause from the day-to-day kind of how this pattern that we get into, and where MITF was allowed him to think about his life differently. And Lexi will also share about her experience and where MITF has brought her today. So I'm going to take a sip of my orange juice. It's a brunch after all. So now that we have all of these kind of bigger questions, I'll just take one more moment to really focus on these kinds of questions. When was the last time that you were able to take a 10 months and really just focus on these kinds of questions? And what other things are you going to be asking yourself and asking the world around you? So let's start on the program itself. So it's a 10-month teaching fellowship where you're working as an aide in the public schools to an English teacher, and you're working in the public schools, which means that you're working along the public school calendar. So the program will run August 23rd, 2021 of this year to July 2nd, 2022 of next year. And when you're seeing these 10 months shaped in front of you, there's really two parts to your year, right? The work of the fellow and the life of the fellow. So we're going to start with what your day-to-day will look like, and then we'll jump into life outside of work, where you're going to be living, the stipends that you're going to be getting, and other perks of the program as well. Part one. Each week, you will be working as an assistant to an English teacher, as I mentioned, which means that you're going to be pulling kids out of about 5 to 6 kids at a time in smaller groups to work with English in a separate environment. You could work with students from age 7 till about 13. Some schools do offer older students opportunities to work with our fellows, but typically that's the range. When you're working in the classroom, like I said, you're pulling students out in smaller groups. And this not only allows you to have the benefits of a smaller classroom, and as educator, that's always the best, to be able to give students one-on-one attention, but it's also your time to really pull on your mentor hat of your work in the school. Because at the end of the day, it's not just your job to teach them, ABCs and the grammar and how to put together sentences. It's also about teaching them about the rest of the world, right? About where you come from and your culture and how you celebrate Judaism. Because how you celebrate your life and how you live your life is very different than how a student might celebrate their life in Petah Tikva or Beersheba, let's say. And so teaching them about who you are, and in turn learning about who they are, is really just as much a part of your work in the classroom as much as is your teaching. And so for those of you who may not have experience teaching in the classroom, or for those of you who do, this is your opportunity to do both, to engage with students, get that experiential piece of the experiential education, and also be able to give them the best English education that you can give them. And what's really special about your classroom work is that parts of it will be working out of workbooks and doing things on paper, but a large part of it will also be the conversations and learning about their weeks and having them ask you what they're doing, what you're doing for your Shabbat and things like that. And your creativity is really what makes those classes so special. We'll hear from Lexi and Jonathan later as well about those experiences and what it's like working in Israeli classrooms, the challenges, the excitements, and what they were able to experience. In addition to your classroom, I mentioned this earlier, you'll work in a classroom 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. About 4.5 days out of the week. So Monday through, let's say, Friday afternoon, that's what you can expect. Some schools vary, but that's the common expectation. And then Friday afternoons, of course, you'll have off. Going into Saturday for your Shabbats, which you'll be able to enjoy wherever you would like, in your home, family, cousins, friends, of course, COVID permitting. But nonetheless, your Shabbat is yours. After school, you'll have an opportunities to do many things. You'll have an opportunity to do Hebrew classes twice a week in the evenings, which we will provide in-house, free of charge and included in the program, because we don't expect our fellows to come with any Hebrew. There'll be opportunities to learn once you're in Israel through these classes, through your time in your classrooms, through your students, and just living in Israel. You start to pick things up, and these classes are a way to support you in that. We also have opportunities to volunteer. Different cities have different requirements on their volunteering. However, every city has opportunities to do this, and we find that our successful fellows are those that get involved in their communities and understand what the community needs, or those who find volunteering projects outside of the classroom, to reflect their passions that are maybe not teaching, and whether that is something that you identify that you want to improve in the community or something that they need. The volunteering experience is a large part of what our fellows and the communities get out of their 10 months. Sundays are the start of the work week in Israel, but on MITF, you don't have to start work quite yet on Sundays. Sundays are really a day that's dedicated to you, the fellow. You're giving a lot of yourself to the classroom during your week, to your students, to the teachers, to your roommates, to whoever it is that you're interacting with. But Sundays are a day that are put on by your program organizer for your city's cohort. They will take you on educational seminars, volunteer trips within your community, volunteer trips in the greater, outside of your city, day trips, a hike somewhere. Some organizers also offer overnight trips as well. And this is your time to get to know the other fellows in your cohorts, see Israel, connect to Israel in different ways, and just get a different perspective. I think something that's really beautiful that comes out of your 10 months is that you just get to see different stories of Israel. And these Sundays are a part of that story. And some Sundays might even be days for you to just enjoy. They're free days for you to go and explore, take a trip, see a city, do a hike that you've always wanted to do. But in work, in school, there's rarely times where someone says, stop, we are taking a few hours, we are taking a day to explore, to get out and to learn. And with MITF, this is really how you're going to start each week. So now we're going to continue on to housing. So that was one of the first things I said. It is very exciting. Your housing is totally taken care of by Masa for those 10 months. And what does that mean? That means that you will be set up in an apartment with others. For the cost of the year, you will also share a room with another fellow. But that being said, if you're interested in a single room, you will have an opportunity to pay an additional cost, flat rate at the beginning of the year, to have a single room, but everybody lives in shared apartments. And that's really where this idea of fellowship comes in, right? It's not Masa Israel Teaching's job, it's a fellowship. There's community, there's cohorts. And so when you're living with fellows that you're seeing on Sundays, you're teaching with, you're creating meals together, you're going on trips together, this is something that our fellows really value. And especially after this past year of a lot intense isolation. You can see this top right corner from an apartment in Jerusalem that I visited a few months ago. And they really shared with me how special it was to have this community built in place and to connect with people and to expand your network. Because at the end of the 10 months, right, everybody goes off to their respective homes, whether it's in the UK, America, they stay in Israel, but now these are people that they have in their lives, whether it's for friendship or professional connections. Just that community aspect has been a really special piece of our program, for the past 10 years that we've run it, but also especially this year. So with the apartments, the rent is paid for, the bills, pertaining to gas, water, electricity are also covered by Masa for the full 10 months. Here you can see an example. These are our newly updated apartments in Petach Tikva. You'll see a video in Petach Tikva in just a moment, but these apartments are overlooking a lake, and they're tall rise with all the other Israelis in the community. Each city looks different. This is the apartment that's only offered in Petach Tikva. If you're interested in seeing what the other living accommodations are, when you speak to those cities, you can ask to be put in touch with fellows, and I'm sure they'd be happy to share with you where they live. But this is just an example. And the apartment, like I said, in the top right corner was from Jerusalem, a really, really sweet group of dedicated fellows. In the apartments, you'll also have, basic furnishings, as you see, like in those photos. Apartments will typically come with beds and, different couches and kitchen amenities. It's challenging to ask anybody to pick up and move anywhere for 10 months, but to come to a new country and have to worry about, rent and Wi-Fi and where things are going, you get to come and know that you have a home already set up for you with roommates and with a, built-in family. The additional perks of MITF, in addition to the housing, in addition to the opportunities of volunteering and programming, we also offer the Hebrew classes, like I mentioned, that's known as Ulpan. That's the Hebrew word for those classes. We also have health insurance included in the year, included in the total cost of the program, which we'll get to in a moment. Your monthly bus passes within the city that you live in will also be paid for. And so that's something that you can just enjoy the place that you're living in. And then once you finish your year with us, you can get reimbursed for flights up to about $1,000. I can't remember the pounds off the top of my head. I'll have to apologize. But that's what you can get for your flights. So when you're paying for the flights initially at the beginning of the year, that's what you do as the applicant. But then once you finish the year with us, you can get that reimbursed. So I'll share a little bit with you about our MITF community. And really what our fellows have been seeing this year is just the power of connection. Our fellows have had challenges, teaching virtually, working through COVID. We just had our fellows vaccinated a few weeks ago, which was very, very exciting. And so hopefully with their second vaccination and as Israel opens up more, they'll be able to get back into their classrooms. But I was sharing with Lexi just before this started that, when we were getting the vaccinations, I was speaking with the fellows and somebody specifically, a lot of people were saying that, they were also naturally worried about those challenges, but that on their last day of teaching, there was not a dry eye in the Zoom. The kids had signs that they made and held up. The teachers were crying, and because the work that our fellows do, and now we've seen whether in person or person and virtually as we've experienced this year, those connections are still very real and very, very beautiful. These photos are all from this year. Actually, this top photo was taken last week as one of the organizers in Rishon LeZion took their fellows to garden and work in the local garden community center. So it's still been a really special year, and our fellows have been able to see their spaces thrive, in their schools and in their communities as well. Where do you want to live? It's a big question. We have 12 cities. They're all really, really, really special and unique. And I think what is important to understand when we look at these 12 cities, some of these cities are going to strike certain chords with us. You've seen it when you went on tour, when you went on Birthright, when you went with UJIA, if you were there with UJS, these are cities that you know and love, but some of these cities might not be so familiar to you. And you might think, well, I'm not sure, why would I spend my 10 months in a place that I'm not so familiar with? I understand that question. I'm happy to speak to you about it. But we're actually going to hear right now from Lexi, who's going to share that experience and kind of what it was like discovering a new city. And then I will be able to see another video shared by another alumni about the city of Petah Tikva. And these cities are ones that you might not necessarily have been on your trips to Israel, but they're the hidden gems, I truly believe. So Lexi, I'd love to have you share with everybody what it was like discovering Rehovot.
Well, thank you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I was in Rehovot. I'd never heard of it, and I didn't look at any of the cities before I went to Israel. So I was kind of elected to go there, and it was incredible. It's quite quiet, I think. It was about 25 minutes away from Tel Aviv on the bus, but there was like a lot of bars and restaurants, but as I say, it's quite quiet still. I don't know if many people have heard of it. Like I say, it's not really it's not Tel Aviv, it's not Jerusalem, it's kind of a bit of a hidden gem, but it was fantastic. And I think that was highlighted by the people that I was living with. So my fellows are now officially my family. So it really did have a massive impact, the people that I was living with. But yeah, it was great. And I would highly recommend Rehovot, like massively. It was just fun, and the Weizmann Institute is there as well. There is a lot to do there. As the
big science institution,
yeah, so there's a lot to do. It's great shopping opportunities. There's a really good gym there as well.
Great.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Lexi, for sharing your story. We'll continue on and hear of Ben's story in Petah Tikva. And I think that's really great advice that you shared. So the last thing before we watch this video that Lexi said that I really want to highlight is that this is your 10 months to do something different, do something you've never done before. So what better way than to see a completely different side of Israel? And Israel it's a small enough country. You can see spaces, buses, you have trains, you have renting a car, whatever it is that you, how you want to get around and see the beautiful country. But take 10 months to live in a place that you don't know their story, you don't know, what it is to live there. I think that's really what the MITF can offer you. So we'll listen to Ben's story now. Josh, can you see my screen?
Yeah. Just when you reshare, if you unshare it, reshare it, and then click the sound again.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. Give me one moment. Thank you. Okay. There we go. Sorry. It's okay. No worries. There we go.
Hi, my name is Ben, and I'm on the MITF program in Petah Tikva. As a child growing up in southern Georgia, I went through many hardships that made me question why I was born Jewish. Throughout my childhood, students my age would purposefully throw anti-Semitic slurs and gestures at me each day that I walked the halls of my school. On this program, I am given the opportunity to be the person for my students that I once wish I had in school. In Israel, I have found self-love I never thought was obtainable. I get to walk around each day, not in fear, to explore my Jewish identity in my own terms. And to my family, I cannot emphasize enough how being here has made me realize how grateful I am to have a family who has always shown love and support, even in times when I rejected everything about my identity.
So thank you, everyone, for enjoying Ben's story with us. You can see that it's really touched a beautiful place in Lexi's heart, and I love seeing that reaction, because that's really what this program has. Lexi, if you'd like to share a little bit in a moment, I see that you knew him and are friends with him. I actually just spoke to him last week specifically, asking him about his experience and how he's enjoying it. Life post MITF, and he also just always had the most positive things. He always has the most positive things to say, and so I'm happy that we were able to see that beautiful reaction. So thank you for having that with us.
Yeah, Ben was amazing, and all the guys that came up on the sofa in Petah Tikva, they had their own little family, and it was just incredible experience. So we were actually as I said, I was in Rehovot and they were in Petah Tikva, but we would meet up on the MITF days out and meet up throughout the week and stuff. And just because they were in a completely different city, we were still, unified and still now have a connection. So it really has, excuse me, even though we're not in the same country, on completely different time zones, we still shared that experience, and it's just complete love, and everyone's got a different story to go there with and to come back with as well. And it just, thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. And so you have another great, contact if anybody's interested in learning about Petah Tikva or what that experience is like. Like I said, I just spoke to Ben earlier this week. So if you're interested in hearing about his story or asking about his experience, I'm also happy to put you in touch, as well as, with Lexi and Jonathan after this conversation too. So how do we go from, emotional friendship to bagels? We're just going to do it. I want you to go, let's jump back into the brunch theme, right? So we have this concept of brunch. So bear with me. When you're walking down the street, right, going to get a good bagel, a good one for breakfast. You know, I'm personally gluten-free, but I can still appreciate a good bagel, even a good gluten-free bagel. If you believe me, they do exist. So when you're seeing two brunch restaurants, right, one next to the other, which restaurants are you more inclined to go to based on the menu? One that has bagels with different toppings, the schmear, with, you know, maybe different flavors, cream cheese, some lettuce. Or are you looking to go to the brunch place that, you know, just has some bagels? Maybe they were leftover, maybe they were made fresh, but just bagels. I think we can all have the same conclusion that the bagels with schmear tends to be a little more interesting. Now, why are we speaking about bagels besides it being a brunch hour? The reason is you're jumping into the job market post MITF. Whether you've been in the job market before or this is your first time going into the working world, you're going to be posting your CV, right? And just like those menus that had one bagel that was a nice bagel, a fresh bagel, all the same ingredients as the bagels next to it, but the brunch place next to it had bagels with things that just made it stand out. And that's what MITF is going to bring to you. And regardless of if you're a teacher or if you want to be the CEO of a next, you know, Fortune 500 company, MITF education, everything that has to do with education is really at the backbone of any work that you're going to be doing, right? You're going to have to explain things to other people, to communicate your ideas, to be able to remain organized, to be able to remain patient, right? You're going to be able to speak to an 8-year-old child who maybe has never heard English before. And by the end of the year, you're going to be able to speak to them. You're able to communicate in a different language to a child who doesn't know what your life is like and you don't know what their life is like, right? At the beginning of the year. Think about what you can do in any company. Think about that global mindset that you're able to bring to your job. But you've just met me. Who am I to say that this is something that it can bring you? I want to give you some examples of other alumni who are all over the world, who are in America, the UK, Israel, South Africa, Australia, who have taken their MITF experience and taken that next step. So right now, we have 3 very different jobs, very different people on all sides of the world. What do they all have in common? How do they all get their jobs? With MITF. They're able to bring MITF into their CV, into their working experience, regardless of their career. And you can see at the bottom here, this our alumni, Natalie, she is a teacher. She came in as a teacher and is still working as a teacher. Actually, she stayed in Israel for another year. We have Ben, who we just saw the video of, who's working in Wisconsin as a BI consultant, and Jordan, and all of these things. What's at the root of them? MITF. Let's see if you can guess, what do these 2 jobs have in common? MITF. Let's try one more time. What do these 3 people have in common? DC, New York, Jerusalem. 3 different jobs. The US government, Aardvark, Israel. MITF. MITF is an experience that you're going to take with you outside of your 10 months in Israel. But again, it's not just for me to say it. I'm going to hand it back over to Josh, who's going to speak with Lexi and Jonathan more about their experience and for you to hear about their lives.
Great. Hello, everyone. If you can unshare the screen.
Yeah, so I'm trying. There we go.
Yeah, so I've known both Lexi and Jonathan for a long time, and it warms my heart that they're here with us, especially on this cold day. And I just kind of want to hear from you, at least in your own words and in your own, about where you were at in your life. You know, what brought you to the point where you were like, Israel has to happen. I've heard both of your stories before, and I love them. It makes me like not take for granted things in my life. And, you know, then maybe a little bit onto the experience itself, like how then did it meet your expectations? And where are you at now that you're back? It's kind of like a 3-pronged question, which is before, during, and after. So maybe we'll start with Jonathan, because we haven't heard Jonathan's wonderful tones yet. So over to you, Jonathan. What would you like to say?
So I think the main thing for me was that I'd been working in the corporate world for 5 years before I went on MITF. So I'd graduated and I had this job in a company and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. But I thought it is what I should be doing. You know, I'd gone to school, I'd gone to university, you go get a job in a business and that's what you spend your life doing. And a friend of mine had done MITF about 3 years before I ended up doing it. And she spent 3 years pushing me every week to do it. She's like, you've got to go do this. You hate your job, get out of it. I was like, no, like I'm doing actually quite well at work, even though I don't like it. I should need to keep going at it. And after 5 years, I have had enough. I can't do this for a moment longer. And I thought, I've got to get out of it. So I thought, let's just go abroad. Let's do something totally different for a year, and then, you know, take a career break and then go back to it. And I thought, like, you know, lots of my friends had done sort of things like gap years in Southeast Asia and that kind of thing. But I was like, do you know what? My friend had done this thing in Israel. I liked Israel. I've been a few times before. You know, you get paid to do it. It sounds quite easy. Like, fine, let's just do that. And so I went off, and I had the most amazing time. It totally changed my perspective on what I wanted to do with my life. It totally changed my view on Israel. It totally changed my view on work and career. And it very quickly taught me some really important life lessons. Like, there's always been this, like, you know, the cliche goes around, like, money doesn't buy you happiness. Like, you got to love what you do. It's not about how much you earn doing it. And I'd always been chasing, like, the next paycheck. And I would count down the days till my paycheck came in every month, because I was just like, that's the only thing that made my job worth it. And you were chasing the next pay rise, and you were comparing, like, I used to compare my salaries to what my friends were earning. It was like, oh, I'm doing better than them, or I'm doing worse than them based on what we were all earning. And when I got to MITF, I was like, you know, obviously the financial structure is a bit different, as explained, because everything's taken care of you. So you don't earn money for rent because they pay your rent, they pay your bills, they pay your travel, etc. Pay for your flight, you know, they'll reimburse your flights there and back. But like, the money you get is like, it's enough to live on, it's enough to enjoy yourself. But it's like, it's not what I was earning in the private sector, because it's not a private sector job. And I was like, oh, wow, I've taken a pay cut, and I'm so much happier. Like, I'm not chasing money anymore. I'm living in this world where actually, like, I've got money to do all the things I want to do and more, like, but it's not like, you know, a crazy thing with a bonus at the end. But I'm much happier, and I loved what I did. And not only did I love the life and love being in Israel, and Lexi talked amazingly about, like, the friendships she made, and everything she said is true and more. Like, the connections you make on this program are incredible. But I even loved the teaching, which I was not expecting, because for me, I didn't even like kids that much before I went on MITF. I was like, I'm going to go because I want to be in Israel, and I want to, like, get out of the corporate world for a year, but, like, I'll just deal with the teaching. Like, it's just like, I've hated my job for 5 years. I may as well have another job for another year that I don't really like. But I got there, and it was the best part of the whole year, the teaching and being with the kids. And you walk into this school, and you've got like 600 kids just desperate to spend time with you. They want to talk to you. They want to be your friend. And, like, quite often you live in the area where your school is, so you see your kids out and about when you're walking to the shops and stuff, and they always just wanted to hang out with you. And it's the most, like, life-affirming thing you can be doing, to have so many people, like, so desperate to be with you all the time. And for me, that was like, wow, all these things I didn't know that I would like, or didn't know that I would enjoy, or the kind of lifestyle I was living that I didn't think would ever be for me. All of this just came together in this 1 year and was like, this is it for you. So anyway, to sort of move on to Josh's final point of, like, how this is, what this has done for me now. My company has said they would keep my job open for me, and the plan was that I would go back to it. And I said to them, actually, do you know what? Things have changed. I can't do this anymore. And I ended up getting a job at a charity in London called UJIA, which is also where Josh works. Masa, Josh will explain this better than I can, but Masa is partners with UJIA in the UK. And we're also the UK provider of Birthright. And I wanted to work in the Jewish world. And so now I work for an Israel charity. Part of my job is helping to get people to go to Israel. Part of my job is to raise money for Israel. Part of my job is to engage people with Israel. And that's what I do now. And that's the impact it had on my life. I am so much happier now than I was before I went on the program. I get so much like meaning from my work now that I never used to get before. And I think, you know, that has been one of the biggest impacts it's had on me. And I would say, hands down, it's the best decision I've ever made to go on this program. I know that I'm not alone when I say that. So many people think that, whether they were right at the beginning of their careers or they've been working for a few years. There's so much you can get out of this program.
I mean, the only downside is that you have to work with me, but, you know, that's a side note. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Constantly, whenever you say that, I feel like I've listened to it for the first time. I think it's it's really quite heartwarming, and I'm jealous that you got to experience that and I didn't. Okay, I'm going to throw the same question over to Lexi. And I know I met Lexi 4 years ago, a very unique, something can't be very unique, that's a West Wing reference, a unique time of your life. And I remember the moment. And yeah, Lexi, over to you for the same question, before, during, and after, how it's impacted you, how you made the decision to go, what it was like there, and then afterwards.
Okay, right, let me try and sorry, my internet went a little bit funny then. So before, during, and after, and how I've changed. Yeah, cool. So before, when I first met you on Birthright, I just like, my relationship had just fallen apart, and I was seeking something internal and external. I was like, I know what I'll do, I'll go to Israel. Everyone's like, you can't go to Israel. I'm like, yeah, I can go to Israel. So went to Israel on Birthright, met you, had an amazing time, probably cried about 85% of the time. And I just felt so whole being there. I'd never been before, wasn't brought up Jewish. I didn't feel like I belonged, because I was so different. And then obviously found out, oh, I am actually Jewish and I do have somewhere that I belong, and that's Israel, and with other people that are, some people aren't as passionate about sort of Judaism, but that's cool. It is what it is to anyone. And then I came back home after that, and I got back into that really bad relationship, and then I split up with him again and was like, I know what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back to Israel. So it's kind of like my escapism. But I had a really good job in public health, and I was working with children, and I knew I wanted to go back to Israel. And I found out about MITF whilst I was on Birthright in the desert. There was a fellow come and spoke to us, and I was like, oh my God. They were like, do you have a degree? I was like, yes. Do you like working with children? Yes. Are you Jewish? Yes. I was like, this is it. Like, this is where I need to be. So my contract was coming to an end with my job, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to Israel. And they were like, oh, you're not going to stay? So they, the same as you, Jonathan, they amazingly kept the position open for me, which, unlike yourself, well, it's good that you didn't like your job, because you didn't go back and now you've got a really good job that you love. I did love my job, so I was really, really torn, but I just needed to get away. I was skint when I moved to Israel. I didn't have a penny. So the same as you're going somewhere, your rent is paid, you know that you're going to be able to support yourself to buy some food. And it's same as Vanessa said, you're like moving in, like you've got like a home, a family, like you there's a sofa and a brother and a sister, and it's like, you just, everything's there, which is great, especially when you're coming from obviously somewhere that I was so lost and just needed something. So went to Israel, had an amazing time. I was actually in a secondary school, so like what's it called in America?
High school,
that's it. Yeah, so I was with a load of older kids that kind of could speak English a little bit better. So my experience, I think, was slightly different to a lot of other people that are interacting with very, very young children, because I got to experience this kind of like teenage Israeli life, which was crazy. And I'm sure that you've all heard the word balagan, and you're all going to hear it 1,100 times over. But yeah, it's just crazy. And I was able to really immerse my craziness into that craziness, and it kind of explained a lot for my kind of the way I am. And whilst I was there, again, like, it was just, I know, again, a cliche, I just really found myself. I was really able to be who I thought I was meant to be. The people, again, the people that I live with are just, we're so solid. Like, they're all still out in Israel, apart from me. I'm the only one missing. I had to come home because of COVID. As it transitioned into sort of teaching online, because it was so new, they actually made the transition really quickly. Obviously, Israel High Tech, they knew what they were doing a lot sooner than they did like in England. It was a struggle, but they managed to do it. But you know, going forward, all them sort of precautions of like COVID and it's going to be completely different, but I still feel like the experiences that are going to be are the same, because it's that interpersonal connection, like just being there, just being in the country is completely different. And yeah, since coming back, I've gone back to my job in public health and still working with children. I think learning how to teach online with MITF in them initial stages has definitely helped me be able to sit in front of a computer and teach children in my current position now as well. I tried to keep up with my Hebrew, but it's hard, and it's hard home learning Hebrew. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely, I think there'll definitely be people out there that understand when I say this, that it's a feeling of home. Like if you've never been to Israel, there's something inside you that is telling you to go. Listen to that. And if you've been and you know that feeling, just go again. Like yeah, that's how that connection, that's how it's changed me. I know I belong there. So yeah.
Great. So, I mean, I have to say, just before I head back to Vanessa, that it's been, I mean, I've actually, both Jonathan and Lexi, I've been quite entwined in your past. That sounds a bit dodgy, but you know, that Jonathan, I met you when you were on MITF for the first time in Israel, and Lexi, I met you at the airport when you were about to go on Birthright.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're unique parts of your life, and it's been a true pleasure to actually play, you know, to see it unfold. And I think that there's so much that the people out there listening can learn from you, from both of you, about how you can use an experience of Israel to fit into, you know, the successes in your life, but also some of the challenging parts of your life as well. And I think that that's especially, you know, what we're about to come out of, fingers crossed, I think it could be a really good tonic for some of the challenges that many people are having in their lives at the moment. So yeah, so thank you very much for sharing that. I'm going to head back over to Vanessa, who's got some more specific questions to ask you for the last 15 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some time to answer any questions if there are any from the field. So over to you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing, Jonathan, Lexi, so honestly, because it's really wonderful to hear about that on the ground experience and to understand those complexities and nuances that make up your 10 months, and then also, you know, who you are today. So thank you for sharing that. Before we go into kind of our FAQ section of, you know, more niche and specific and questions that you might have on your mind, I wanted to give you a few more numbers to throw at your way. So when you see this whole year, the full 10 months, what does that year cost? It costs £750. If you have been on a Masa program before, that is something that we can speak about and what that will look like and how that will affect your cost of the year. But the program itself will cost that £750, which you can get reimbursed for your other flights up to £750 as well. And then the monthly stipend for fellows, and this is something I wanted to cover before we hopped into the rest of the FAQ, is that there's two different tracks really that one can apply on, but it applies to those who are just the typical fellows and those who have a teaching credential. If you have a teaching credential, you'll have a more frontal role in your classroom. You'll take on more of that leader teacher position, as well as getting a different monthly stipend. So if you are a fellow, someone who is coming in without a teaching credential, a certificate from a university, you'll be getting about £390 a month in stipends. That's about 1,750 shekel. And if you are a teacher, a certified teacher, you will be getting about £895 for the monthly stipend. So that's about 4,000 shekel. And if you are a certified teacher, you'll need to send in your certification with your application in order to be approved for those added bonuses, as well as a teacher's track. Yes, Josh.
I was just going to say that if you then work that out with the fact that you don't have to pay rent and your travel, it is pretty sweet, actually.
Yeah, it is. And you know, especially because the biggest flight from the biggest cost up front will be that flight. But it's something that you know that once you finish the 10 months, up to £750 of that will be also reimbursed and covered by Masa. So just another piece for you to think of as we're moving forward. So now let's get into kind of questions that have been asked that might be on your mind. And we'll have myself, Josh, Lexi, and Jonathan go through these and answer from our experiences. So the first one we've touched upon a few times is, do I need to know Hebrew to do MITF? And I think because Lexi mentioned this before, we'll have her answer that question, right? It's a big one. You're coming to a country that English is not the first language. You have students where they might not have ever heard a word of English in their life. What could they do?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I didn't know any Hebrew, and the 2 OLPAN classes a week definitely do help, because that teaches you the formal language. But being submersed in the language by far is the best way to learn. So you will pick stuff up, and it's the day-to-day things out at the store, or just on the street, watching like TV programs and stuff. That kind of will get you the kind of flow. But in school, you are constantly hearing the things that are important to know in school, which massively helps. So no, you don't need to know Hebrew to do MITF. You will learn at your own pace, and the things that are specific to kind of your environments as well. But yeah, I definitely, now I've kind of lost it all because I've not been practicing it, but I again went from literally shalom to being able to form full sentences, understanding things. And as well, in the apartments, we kind of, we were at different levels, but we fill the walls up with words, put stickers on the wall of the different utility items. So it's not, I wouldn't say be scared if you don't know Hebrew, because it's something that will definitely come, especially if you go to Aroma a lot.
Great, thank you. This next one, Jonathan mentioned it before. I like working with kids, but I've never been a teacher. Is this the program for me? Jonathan?
Yeah, so like, I've already said like my feelings on kids before and my feelings on kids now. But in terms of the actual teaching, you get a lot of training. When you arrive in Israel, one of the first things that happens is you get a lot of training from really experienced educators, not only on how to teach, but on how they want you to teach specifically in Israeli schools. As Vanessa sort of mentioned earlier on, you're like, it's not just about teaching grammar and like, tense this or that tense or whatever. It's about teaching them to communicate and about talking to them. So like a lot of what I did was, firstly, you're given a lot of freedom, actually, I should say, to do the kinds of stuff you want within the framework of what they're trying to get out of the kids from their time with you. So like I spent a lot of time, if I had like a group of girls, say, like I might ask them what song they were listening to at the moment. Usually it was Katy Perry, and then we translate the song together, and then that's something they really enjoyed. If like last thing on a Friday, I had a group of boys and they were just like restless and wanted to go home, I'd take them outside, we'd play football together for an hour. And like, as long as we were talking in English about football, they were getting something out of it. They were communicating, they were learning. So it's not just about sitting in a classroom with a blackboard and like being really strict and doing the really tough stuff. It's about finding ways to make them interested in English, make them want to learn English. But yeah, I had never taught a class of anything in my life, but you are given the confidence and the skills to go and do that. So it's totally fine never to have been a teacher before.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Josh, this is going to be a good question for you. You know all the trips, you've seen the programs. Like, why is this 10 months a good enough reason to go?
So I personally really think, I mean, especially if you're looking at now, in general, pre whatever the C words, I'm not going to mention it. It was a fantastic opportunity, and everything you look at in order to understand Israeli society, to understand the bones of it, to understand what it's like there, but also to have a really meaningful long-term experience there, I think can drastically change your life. Birthright is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I used to coordinate that program. I have been a leader on Israel tour. I went on a gap year myself. These are very meaningful experiences, but to go there as an individual, to spend time with people around the world, to meet real Israelis, this isn't like you're, on tour, you meet this educator that's going to talk to you about Zionist history, which you will get aspects of that on MITF, but you're really meeting the next generation, real Israelis on the street. And that's why I think that this program is firstly, it's just a really good step for whatever your level of engagement is, whether you've been on Birthright, whether you've not even been at all before, or whether you've been like 10 times, whether your parents have got a family home in Netanya and you feel like you know the country, you don't know the country, you know, in your way, and you actually to go and meet and have conversations and really actually to make a difference. You know, it's what a lot of these programs that go is that, you know, we talk about volunteerism and we talk about all of this type of stuff. Like, I genuinely believe that the Masa Israel Teaching Fellows program can make a meaningful impact on the lives of young people in Israel, because one of the things that the reason why the program was created and why the Israeli, the Ministry of Education really thinks it's important is because it's all well and good an Israeli teacher teaching English with their, you know, with that before they start. But actually, when you've got like an English or British or English speaking person teaching English, is so much more powerful for Israel, and especially as Israel is trying to get into the globe. I mean, it is part of the global world now, the global market. To have young people knowing how to communicate in English is incredibly important. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Vanessa, but that's what I'm going to go with for now.
That's great. Thank you. So some people might have, you know somebody who's done the program before, or who's going on the program with them to listen to a little bit and get those pieces of advice. And so Lexi is here to be that friend who's done the program before and kind of calm your nerves a bit.
Yes, definitely. That's exactly, I think, a phrase to just be calm about it. Don't be nervous. It's obviously a lot easier said than done, but the thought process behind that statement is that everything will be fine. Everything's going to be okay as long as you go in being your most genuine self and allow yourself to absolutely shine, allow yourself to be vulnerable, and try not to kind of like, you'll find your people, and especially when you're living in a group, you know, it's, as we just said earlier, there's always going to be challenges, especially, for example, if you live with your family. You know, someone might not do the washing up in the same way you might, but you know, that's just shared living. So you're going to be given that family, you're going to be given this friendship bubble, and then the bigger bubble of MITF and Masa whilst you're out there, and then the community. And it's the amount of external relationships to the program that you'll make is actually quite it's quite a lot. But just even people that you see on the street quite regularly, that, as Jonathan said, the kids that you meet, there's no reason to be nervous about going on the program. And as Vanessa said, Josh is here, Jonathan's here, I'm here. There's other fellows that would definitely be more than happy to speak with you as well, guys.
Great, thank you. Israeli schools can be a very different environment than those in the UK and those, you know, other spaces around the world. It's a unique experience in and of itself, and I think Jonathan's going to be able to put it best.
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit earlier, but walking into an Israeli school is like totally unlike walking into a British school. It's weird because everyone thinks it's a very undisciplined place, but it is, but in its own way. But I think the key thing is that actually I really felt like kids enjoyed being at school, and what they really enjoyed was getting to go with fellows. So they try and mix up the kids each week who go with you and spend time with you, and they're always clamoring. They really want to be in your class, and I think that's something that like every fellow finds in whichever school they're in. And you develop this really strong relationship with your host teacher. So you're paired with a Israeli English teacher who's a properly qualified teacher, and she's there to make sure, or he is there to make sure that the kids are learning the curriculum and they're going to be able to pass their exams. But obviously that isn't what learning a language is all about. They also want to make sure that the kids enjoy it and that kids can learn how to communicate it properly as well in the outside world. I remember when we started, the Minister of Education at the time came to speak to us, and he was like, this is about making sure that like our young people can go out into the world and can sell Israeli high tech and can sell Israeli businesses and do deals. And you know, you might think you're just there to teach kids some English, but you're actually building the Israeli economy of the future by doing this. And that really stuck. And I think when you have in mind just how important the job you're doing is and what the service you're doing for the country, and then actually that helps to inspire you in the school as well. And the kids really respond to like your passion as well. So they're an interesting place. But the other thing I would say about Israeli schools are a bit different is the Israeli school day is a lot different. So it lasts from about 8 till about 2 in the afternoon. I think my school day used to finish at like 1:45. So basically you're sort of finished at lunchtime and then you've got the whole rest of the day to go and do stuff. And that's like not something to be sniffed at, to have a huge amount of free time as well, to go and actually explore the country, like Josh said, or go and spend time like with your new, like with the friends you're making, like Lexi said, whatever it is, just like you get a lot of freedom as well from it.
Great, thank you. So this next question is going to be one that is asked and something that we are also going to be exploring with as Israel moves forward. But right now, excuse me, our fellows have had a combination of a year, both virtually and in person. And as I said earlier, even with the few to even just one class before switching virtually, that transition is supported through the lead teachers, through the mentor teachers, through your city's coordinators. And as well as it's just a piece of life, and it's kids are very adaptable. The students are very ready to still learn and connect with you as a fellow. So regardless of how you're going to be working with your students and what the COVID laws permit, that connection and that ability to teach is still very much there. This last question, Jonathan and Lexi both gave a few examples of working, whether it was volunteering or meeting up with fellows from different cities. Or getting involved in different projects. There's also opportunities throughout the year that Masa offers both virtually and who knows, maybe even in person, to be able to take advantage of those opportunities as well.
Do you want me to say something on that, or is it?
I will keep going because I want to respect
okay.
everybody's time, but thank you. And I see the questions popping up in the chat. And right after this, we'll go over eligibility and what you'll need to have in order to do this program. So the last bit of advice is always a question that I hear is, what should I do to prep? Besides coming in with an open mind for Hebrew, an open mind for working with students, working with kids, these are things that you can do and that are very tangible. If you're interested in learning, the Aleph Bet and just want to get your brain in the Hebrew mindset, like this says, you can download Duolingo and look at what that Hebrew alphabet looks like. Or if you are interested to see what our teaching fellows are working on, there's this toolbox that you can see the website. And you can see examples of lesson plans. It's nothing for you that you need to work on right now because there is a lot of information on that website, but it's just something to see if you're interested in something that our fellows are doing. How do you secure your spot on the program? So we're going to answer the question that was just asked. So in order to secure your spot on the program, first of all, you need to be eligible. And so what are those eligibility requirements? What makes another reason why this program is so amazing is that it's our largest age range for Masa programming. Our program is open from 21 years old until 35. Typical Masa programming is only till 30, but this is for 21 through 35. And that age starts at 21 because you are required to have a bachelor's degree. If you have any specific questions on if a degree that you're specifically earning is the equivalent of a bachelor's degree, feel free to email me and reach out to Josh as well, and we're happy to give you more specific information. But you need to be between 21 and 35 to have a bachelor's degree, to identify either religiously or spiritually as Jewish, and be from an English-speaking country. And those are really the requirements in order to be able to start this amazing journey. And so how it works is that it's a rolling registration. So we're constantly getting in applications, it's being reviewed, they're being accepted, they're being rejected, people are putting down their deposits, and it runs until July. However, we typically see cities start to fill up by around mid-February. So we're hitting that range right now. So what I would suggest from you is get that application started. Speak to either the city that you're interested in, or if you don't know what city you're interested in, you can say looking for more information and schedule a call with myself. And I can give you some more information about all of the 12 cities and help learn about you and direct you to the city that's right for your 10 months. But start that application process. Speak to our recruiters, speak to myself, start thinking about it, get everything rolling, because your spot isn't saved until you put down the deposit. And the deposit is the 300 out of the 1,000 in order to be able to secure your spot on the program. So what that means is that start listening, start filling out things, ask questions, learn about what you can do to make these 10 months your reality. And I know we're 1 minute over, and I just want to leave you with one more thought. And I think both Jonathan and Josh spoke about this beautifully, about what you're doing on these 10 months for the Israeli communities. And these students, you're giving them that exposure to English, that ability to step into the global world, ask themselves, what can I do to change the world? What can I do to change myself? Without the exposure to English and without your mentorship and fellowship and presence in the classroom, they're just not given the same opportunities to ask those kinds of questions of themselves. If you'd like to see more of what our program consists of, definitely check us out on Instagram. You can DM us on there, get your questions answered. And I'm always around to speak. You can also email me or Josh, and we're really happy to talk through your questions, what you're nervous about, what you're excited about, what other alumni have done in the past, what fellows are doing right now. All of those questions we are happy to answer. It's really just about getting those conversations started. I really, really want to thank you for joining us on your cold and snowy Sunday morning with my son out in Jerusalem. So thank you for bringing out the sunshine. Yeah, I know, Josh, you're jealous, I know. But I'll let Josh sign off, say a few words in closing as well. But thank you. And it was so wonderful to have you join us today.
Great. So thank you. I want to thank Vanessa. I also want to thank Lexi and Jonathan for joining us on a Sunday morning. I also want to thank the Union of Jewish Students and UJIA for supporting this event. And have a really great Sunday. And we're all around. I also can speak on behalf of Lexi, I think, and Jonathan. If you ever want to throw some questions their way, they're more than happy to answer them. We can give you, me and Vanessa can give you details, and they can give you kind of details plus the emotion and the vibe and what they went through. And I just thank you so much for listening, and have a really great remainder of your weekend, and we will hopefully speak soon.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jonathan and Lexi. Bye, everybody.